I started the day on November 5th feeling hopeful. That evening, I stayed up a bit later than usual, watching with dismay as some election returns were announced. I could feel hope dwindling and my anxiety rising. There was some good news here in New York, and I was relieved when I learned that Prop 1, the state's Equal Rights Amendment, had passed. Folks in this congregation had volunteered with organizers at Planned Parenthood, encouraging New Yorkers to vote yes on on important changes to the state's constitution. And while this was a win, the national news was bleak. My hope was fading one state at a time. I opted to stop checking results for a bit and made some toast, my favorite comfort food. Eating toast didn't help me feel any more hopeful, just a bit less distressed. I went to bed feeling worried and tense. At about 4 a.m., I woke up, checked my phone for election updates, and was devastated. As the possibility of an administration that valued justice, equity, and interdependence evaporated, so did the last of my hope on that day. Feeling deeply sad and afraid, I cried for all the people who were now at even greater risk. Cried for the ways that this beautiful planet would be harmed by greed. And I cried for the very soul of our country. In general, I lean toward optimism and often find hope in small things. The flash of red as a cardinal lands at our bird feeder, saving seeds for next year's garden, witnessing kids being kind and creative, or hearing our Hindu neighbor chant his morning prayers while standing outside in the snow. Any of these can help my spirit feel more buoyant and hopeful. And on the morning of November 6th, hope was hard to find. Have you had times like that? Maybe you're having a time like that right now, a time where grief or worry or despair are closer than you want and hope feels very distant. If that is the case, know that you are not alone. Know that there is space for you here in all the ways that you are feeling. So when we talk about hope, what do we mean? Unitarian poet Emily Dickinson wrote that hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. But what if our hope has stopped singing? Emily Nagoski felt like her hope was broken. She is a sex educator, researcher, and best-selling author. She also lives with depression and says she hasn't felt hope in 20 years. She said it as though her hope had stopped singing. So, as a scientist and a researcher, she wanted to learn more about what hope is and what one can do when they cannot find it or feel it. Nagoski learned from Adrienne Martin, a moral philosopher and author of How We Hope. Martin formulates that hope is a desire for an outcome and the belief that the outcome is possible but not certain. And that we use our assessment of that possibility as justification for feelings, thoughts, and plans. So for Martin, hope is justifying your feelings, thoughts, and plans based on your assessment that a desired outcome is possible. What is it called, though? Nagoski wondered, when you have no reason to believe a wanted future may come to pass, and yet you continue to work toward it just as if you did believe you could make a difference. What's the name for that emotion, she wondered, when you move toward the world that you want, knowing that you just might be approaching a cliff? Adrienne Martin calls that faith. Emily Nagoski resonates with this, even as she identifies as an atheist. She says, I walk with faith because I know that my job is here on earth, and I'm going to do my job, even though I have no good reason to believe that I will ever see the world that I'm working to create. My faith is not in any supernatural critter, she says, but in the arc of history bending toward justice. As long as all of us, or maybe many of us, keep pressing it toward justice. Community can help us find such faith, even when hope is hard to find.
When our son was young, my wife Carol and I loved reading him the Little Bear stories by Elsa Holmlund Minerick. Little Bear has his little adventures, and Mother Bear patiently attends to him and guides him along the way. In this story, Little Bear's Wish, Little Bear can't sleep, and Mother Bear asks why. I'm wishing, says Little Bear. What are you wishing for, Little Bear? Mother Bear asks. I wish I could sit on a cloud and fly all around, says Little Bear. You can't have that wish, my little bear, Mother Bear responds. And several other fanciful wishes follow. Finding a Viking boat, driving a red car, all ending with the same gentle reminder from his mother. Over the years, whenever I or Carol might dream aloud of something we knew was beyond our budget or remaining vacation days, the other would smile and answer, that is a big wish, little bear. There are big hopes and there are small hopes. I hope that our weekly farm share will have acorn squash this week. That is a small hope. I hope the Green Bay Packers will win the Super Bowl this season. Sorry about Buffalo. That is a small hope. Okay, maybe that one is a medium hope. I have had some really big hopes in my life. I mean, really big, like changing the world big. As a young adult, I lived in Manhattan, working as a bartender, but inhabiting a world of aspiring actors and writers and directors, would-be philosophers and revolutionaries. New ideas, new to us at least, blazing in our minds, brighter than the sun above. I recall animated talks in cafes, on city sidewalks. Might I be the one to write the novel or play, the one to usher in a new consciousness, a consciousness for the 21st century? one where people finally transcend tribalism, a world where our commonality is celebrated and built upon. Yeah, I was a UU long before I learned about this faith. Spoiler alert, I did not develop a new world changing philosophy. Sometimes our hopes are not big enough. As a young man, I hoped for love with a partner. That is a big hope. Brokenhearted, I learned to hope for love and compatibility. That hope came true. What do you hope for? What are we hoping for? Are these big hopes or small hopes? At times we struggle to name our hopes. Have you ever felt a vague longing, a sense that something is missing, but you couldn't put a mental finger on what you might hope for? How do you imagine that for which you have no inkling? I felt such a longing for many years. By all the common yardsticks, work, home, friends, my life seemed full enough. But still, something was missing, wanted, needed, a hope unnamed. And then I came here, to this dome, to this music, to this coffee hour, to the prayers and poems and homilies of this pulpit, to our shared joys and sorrows. This church was my unimagined, unnamed hope. How could I have foreseen? Previously, church had been a very different experience for me. I was not going around saying, I hope to belong to a beloved community. Beloved community was not a phrase in my vocabulary until I came here, until this place showed me something beyond what I had imagined. The power in this place renews my hope over and over. No, I still haven't developed a new world-changing philosophy, and I am okay with that. The truth is that I didn't need to be the person to tackle that one. Others far more suited have done that work and continue to do it. Wisdom abounds. This faith reassures me over and over. Look to our UU sources, look to this pulpit, to the scholars and justice warriors who guide and inform our work. In this community, by each of our examples, our questions, our triumphs, and our failures, the unnamed can be named. The vague can be made distinct. The too big can be shrunk a little. The too small can be expanded. Hope takes shape here. Hope is found in community. In small groups, we share deeply, finding in ourselves what we had not seen, what was beyond us. In our services, we are inspired or awakened or simply validated. OMG, there are others like me, others who share these wild hopes. The world will not be changed by any single grand idea or ideal, but rather by the adoption of good ideals. There exists no single novel, no treatise, no magic wand that will transform our world. Hope for such is misplaced. Through our acts, through our examples, through our voices, and our love, can we hope to spread these ideals one small hope at a time? Eventually, Little Bear wishes for something different. I wish a mother bear would come to me and say, "Would you like to hear a story?" "Well," said Mother Bear, Maybe you can have that wish. That is just a little wish. Thank you, Mother, said Little Bear. That is what I really wanted all the time. What kind of story would you like to hear? Said Mother Bear. Tell me about me, said Little Bear. Tell me about the things I once did. And Mother Bear recounts, to Little Bear's delight, his adventure from earlier stories. Many of us worked with UU the Vote and other election efforts to make a big hope come true. We sent postcards and letters, made phone calls, sent texts, made donations, knocked on doors. The outcome of the big hope was not positive, but we helped some down ballot candidates and Proposition 1, and perhaps one person who had never voted this year because of us. My connection with many of you grew closer as we worked together, as we shared our hopes and hugs and tears.
On Wednesday evening after the election, we held a vigil here, knowing that many of you were also feeling heartbroken, angry, overwhelmed, and/or afraid. We didn't really have any hope to offer, yet we also knew that we might find it together. And there it was, a glimmer of hope in small things, in hugs and tears. People risking to come to a vigil at a congregation that was new to them, honest and tender sharing. Folks participating in rituals, honoring different ways of feeling, singing, even though our voices were shaky. Hope, a desire for an outcome, and the belief that the outcome is possible, but not certain. A small ember of resolve in the midst of despair. Sometimes in community, we can imagine a future that we aren't able to picture on our own. Sonia Renee Taylor writes of the power of community. She is a teacher, activist, and author of The Body is Not an Apology, which has become a movement as well as a book. In her poem, A Prayer for the Collective, she writes, I found myself today saying, please, life, surprise me, shock me with your grace, astound me with your kindness. Show me that there is something beyond what it is that I imagined. Show me what is beyond me, because what is beyond me is what we need now. What is beyond us, what we know, what can be known, beyond what is the predictable outcome. Sometimes what we most need is beyond us, beyond what we are capable of on our own, beyond what we are currently imagining or hoping for. In their book called Spilling the Light, Meditations on Hope and Resilience, Reverend Julian Soto writes, in this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. Well, I've already shared with you that there are times that I have not been able to hold hope close on my own. And I have found that Reverend Julian's words ring true. In this community, we hold hope close together. Sometimes you might be holding hope for someone else, and sometimes they will hold it for you. When your heart is heavy with grief, or when you are worried for yourself or someone you love, we will be here holding hope. When the muchness of the world is overwhelming and you can't even remember what it feels like to hope, know that there are folks here who will share some of their hope with you when you are ready. And like Little Bear and his mother, we can share stories of our small and big hopes that remind one another of who we have been, who we are now, and who we are becoming.
So let us continue to hope big. Let us continue to hope small. And let us continue to share the stories of our values, of our works, and of our hopes.
Julian's poem concludes, "We are the people who return to love like a north star, and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and by the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. May it be so for each of us. Amen, and blessed be."